This is simply a biblical response to the madness of the culture with a heart to want to rescue those who have been swept up by the madness of the culture. That's what this is about today. And to illustrate that point, I want to begin by sharing a story close to home here at Cornerstone, okay? A few months ago, we had a young man come here to our congregation. I say young, 30-ish, wearing a spaghetti strap silk dress and heels and makeup, identifying as a woman, sat right down here on the second row. And at first, I have to be honest with you, I wondered, what's the agenda? You're going to get up, you're going to shout in the middle of the service, or you're going to call your friends and come here and disrupt things. And so I was curious, but not wanting to jump to conclusions, so just kind of waiting. He never did any of that. I want to thank those of you, and you know who you are, who intentionally would sit next to him and gently whisper truth to him and tell him about how Jesus loves him and that we're praying for him and want God's best for him. I was also told that there were some of you who would try to engage him in the parking lot, coming or going, to do the same thing, to try to speak truth to him, to whisper that to him. He never was a distraction. He would come week after week. We ended up learning that he had been previously married. He shared custody of a child. And he would sometimes, when he had custody, he would sometimes bring the child with him and register his child in our children's ministry and put the child in Sunday school. And I thought to myself, the child's going to hear the gospel and he's going to hear the gospel. And there were times in the course of my teaching that I would even touch on, because I always try to use the Bible as it can be relevant to everyday aspect of life. And so there were times in the course of his being here that I would even talk about gender confusion, not because he was sitting on the second row and I was trying to target him, but because it was just in my notes. It was part of what I was going to say. And hopefully he would hear the truth and some of this would resonate with him and God would use it. And he would sit there and he would listen. And there were times that he would applaud even things that I was saying, literally applaud. And he was a little bit of a distraction to some of you. I got some emails, not nasty emails, but just people saying, are you aware that there's a guy in a silk spaghetti dress who's registering his kids in children's ministry, and what's he doing back there? And yes, we know, we've seen him, we understand. And he became the topic of a lengthy discussion in our pastors' meeting. And I said to our pastors, look, we're going to have to just give it some time. We're going to have to give it some time. He can't serve anywhere, but he needs to come, he needs to listen. We're going to pray for him. And we're going to hope that God gets a hold of his heart and that he understands the love of Jesus and the transforming work of Jesus. So we're going to just monitor this, but we're going to give it some time. Listen, folks, people don't show up to church all cleaned up. They show up to church messed up. They show up to church lost. It's true. They show up to church lost like sheep without a shepherd, and our desire is to introduce them to the chief shepherd, Jesus, so people can know him and understand him. And if we were to just simply say, you have to leave, then where would he hear the life-changing relationship you can have in Jesus? So we needed to monitor it, and we were. But I said to my pastors, this requires a conversation. And one of our pastors, I think it was Mike Frick, because he's good at this. And so what we decided was we needed to have this kind of conversation with him. And so on one of the Sundays he attended here, Pastor Mike pulled him aside very quietly, discreetly, and basically said this to him: we're glad that you're here. And we want you to come into a relationship with Jesus. And we want your child to know Jesus. And so we're praying for you. We have one request. And the one request is that you honor, for the protection of women and girls, our request that you never go into the women's restroom here at Cornerstone Chapel. That was our one request. Okay? Yeah, we have to protect the women and girls. And that isn't making a judgment against him per se. It's just inappropriate. He's a biological male. And so we said to him, when we had this building built, we didn't do it for any political correctness, but we have a few restrooms that are single stall family restrooms. And so we said to him, please use one of those. Initially, he was miffed, but he calmed down. He heard Mike, and he said he would oblige, and he agreed. And he kept coming for a few weeks, until one day, he tried to enter the women's restroom. And we had been keeping an eye on him for that reason, because we wanted to be sure, for the safety of women and girls, that we were going to protect the bathrooms. And so when he tried to enter one of the restrooms, one of our security guys, who's about 6'6", 6'7", close to 300 pounds, body blocked him and said, you are not holding up to the one thing we asked you to do. At which point he got mad and he left, and he hasn't been back. I share this story with you. I lead with this story because I want you to understand that we must never lose the mission of the church because of our outrage over the madness in the world.